Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you all for being here. Ms. Carey, let me just start with you, if I could. I want to talk a little bit about some NLRB precedents and your views on them. Let's start with captive audience meetings. The NLRB decided last year, I believe it was, that captive audience meetings, these are the meetings where workers are forced to sit through mandatory sessions with the employer, often being told by the employer why they should not unionize, perhaps being threatened implicitly or explicitly. I emphasize these are mandatory meetings now, employer with employee. The NLRB decided last year that these captive audience meetings are not consistent with labor law. You've been very critical of this decision. So just explain this to me.
Thanks for the question, and I'm sorry we haven't been able to connect prior to today. I know we've missed a few opportunities, but I have been critical of that decision, and I stand by everything that I have said publicly in relation.
So you wouldn't be able to enforce it then?
My job, if confirmed, would be to enforce the National Labor Relations Board's decision.
So you've been very critical of it. You just said that you stand by it. You're not going to retract anything, but you're going to be in charge of enforcing it. Doesn't that seem like a problem to you?
It does not, because my job.
Explain that to me.
My job, if confirmed as general counsel, would be to enforce board orders. However, if cases involving those similar issues come back and are filed by charging parties at the regional level, they are investigated on a fact-by-fact basis, and we are determined that there is merit to those. There is prosecutorial discretion for the general counsel to determine whether or not and how to move that case forward. So
Yeah, that's what worries me. It's the prosecutorial discretion that worries me. You've been very vociferously, I think, it's safe to say, critical of the NLRB's standing precedent in this area, and you will have the discretion to enforce it or not, as you just said.
I understand your concern, but every general counsel prior to me has also had the same prosecutorial discretion. I am committed to enforcing the act.
They've not been as openly critical and indeed as steadfastly so as you are on what is a key part of now your enforcement responsibility.
Again, I will be committed to enforcing the act, and the act itself, which was, approved by Congress and established by Congress.
Well, your job is not to enforce the act in the first instance. Your job is to enforce what the board has decided is the controlling law. No.
But those would be separate procedures that you're describing.
Okay, so in other words, you don't see your role as enforcing what the NLRB has done in the past.
My job, if there is questions about the board order, which is not a self-enforcing action, my job would be to enforce that action in the courts.
And you're telling me you would do that despite being critical of it?
That would be my job.
Well, right, but you have discretion to do it or not. And nothing you've said so far has allayed my concerns. In fact, you're worsening them as I sit here.
Well, Senator, I think you're confusing two issues. Enforcing a board order is separate if a new case is filed in a region.
What happens when the official tasked with protecting workers openly criticizes the very rules she's supposed to enforce? In this explosive Senate hearing, Josh Hawley presses an NLRB nominee on captive audience meetings, selective enforcement, and corporate power, setting the stage for one of the most revealing labor showdowns in recent memory.
It's filed in a region, and I'm able to investigate that. The hardworking field attorneys take a look at that case, determine whether or not there is merit. At that point, that is a different case. That is not the Amazon case. Standing precedent would be the Amazon case.
So my question to you is, will you enforce the precedents of the NLRB even if you disagree with them?
I will enforce the board's order, but I will utilize prosecutorial discretion where necessary and I think is appropriate.
Okay, that's not reassuring. You mentioned Amazon, so let's just talk about Amazon. They're a client of yours?
They are.
So is Apple, I think?
Correct.
Activision?
Correct.
You'll recuse yourself from any enforcement decisions or actions involving any of these people, I assume?
Yes, Senator.
When it comes to Amazon, are you familiar with Amazon's Delivery Service Partner Program?
I'm aware of it.
Amazon uses this program to operate its delivery vehicle fleet. Now, you may know drivers wear Amazon vests, they drive Amazon-branded vehicles, they deliver Amazon-branded packages to Amazon customers. The company controls their time schedule, their delivery, their terms of service, the terms of their employment, but the company says at the same time, actually, they're not really our employees. They're wearing their gear, they are driving their trucks, but they say, oh, these are not our employees. They say that these are, in fact, subcontractors. Now, it's hard to imagine that this actually satisfies the joint employer rule. What's your view on this?
The joint employer rule has been for lack of better terms, one of the issues that has flip-flopped a lot in the labor and legal community generally. And, depending on what happens, and it is an incredibly fact-intensive investigation that has to take place to determine whether or not someone is a joint employer or not.
So do you think that Amazon's attempt to control every detail of its drivers' lives, schedules, deliveries, while simultaneously treating them as non-employees, you think that doesn't violate the joint employer rule?
Well, I'm not going to comment on Amazon directly or the program you've described, but I will say that any case that comes before me, if confirmed, I will take a very hard look at, because it is an incredibly fact-intensive analysis.
Yeah, it's fact-intensive, but it's more than just fact-intensive in some legal way. It really matters for the livelihood of thousands and thousands of workers.
Which is why it's incredibly important that whoever is investigating that, and if I am confirmed as general counsel, will ultimately land in my lap, that we do a really good job in making sure that we're analyzing all of the facts before us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a lot more questions for you, Ms. Carey. I have to say, I'm pretty concerned with your record and, frankly, the answers you've given me today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For a more profound political discourse, please like, comment, and subscribe for more further.